All right, so we got a couple of things to talk about today. You saw the title, you saw the thumbnail. You're either angry at me for bringing light to this or you're angry at Nintendo for doing this. But the reason I want to talk about this particular story is because I feel like a lot of people in Western media have been covering this a bit unfairly, not looking at the whole situation, taking a look at it on just the surface layer and not really diving deep into the matter of why this is happening. And I think it's interesting how this kind of stuff gets reported and kind of to bring light to it and bring clarity to it, because I think it's something that's not as cut and dry as a lot of people are making it out to be. But first, we did have an Indie World presentation this morning. Over 75% of you over on Twitter told me that this was not a Nintendo Direct. Indie Worlds are not Nintendo Directs. I kind of agree with you on that, but I woke up for it. I planned to talk about it, and then I went back to sleep, man. I was like, you know what? I'm still kind of tired. I'm going back to bed. There were two things there, though, that were definitely interesting to me. Started off with Mina the Hollower. Always good to see Mina in a presentation. That game will be coming out, of course, at the end of October. And then we had a surprise drop today of UFO 50, which is actually a game that I've been wanting to play for a very long time, but I didn't want to play it on Steam because I didn't want to play it on my PC. UFO 50 is kind of like a compilation of 50 retro style games done in like a painstakingly manner to be, you know, authentic to 8-bit games from that era. And I actually went ahead and picked it up this morning before I started filming this video. It is on sale right now for $25 on the Nintendo Switch eShop. I downloaded it on the Switch 2, of course. A very small download, but I will be doing some coverage on this game because I've heard so many great things about it, and I think this is cool. You know, this is definitely a game that seems right up my alley, so I will be checking it out. Most of the other stuff didn't really interest me. You know, they were very, very indie style games, but maybe you got some enjoyment out of it. Let me know some of your thoughts on the Indie World Showcase presentation direct, super mega corporation direct, in the comments section down below what some of your highlight games were. But the meat and potatoes of what I want to talk about today involves this. Nintendo has forced Japan's biggest speedrun charity, RTA, to remove its games. After years of use, they were told that each title now requires approval. And I saw this and I was kind of like, you know, because you read the headline of this and you're like, oh, this is Nintendo just kind of swinging their e-peen and, you know, doing something that technically they can do, but are the optics necessarily worth it? And when you think about it from the perspective of something like living in America, you know, you're strictly thinking of it from a standpoint of, you know, well, this would be like them walking into, you know, the summer games done quick or whatever and being like, hey, you can't do any more Nintendo games here. You need our permission to do these games. And when you think about it from that perspective, it's very easy to get emotional about this and very easy to not understand it. And as you guys are well aware, I am not someone who is a simp for Nintendo. I call them out a lot and people get upset with me about this, but I call them out on things that I think are fair. And upon first inspection, this actually pissed me off. I'm like, well, what the hell is the point of this? So then I read the article, and most, like I said, most Western articles kind of have it done in a similar style to this. And I am sure there's going to be amazing ads. Look, we got the General for a great low rate. You could get online, go to the General and save some time. Nintendo forces major speedrun charity to remove its games. You scroll down here. At the biggest charity speedrunning event series in Japan, many have been looking forward to the RTA Summer 2025 event. The marathon, which takes place between or from August 9th to August 15th, first showcased its lineup of games back in June, from Cuphead to Silent Hill, blah, blah, blah. Then charity speedrunning event organizers are warned by Nintendo. So on their website, they explain that they were contacted by Nintendo. Now, obviously, this is in Japanese, but we can get a translation of this done. Notice regarding the use of Nintendo games in RTA Japan. Let me zoom in on this for you guys so maybe you can kind of read along with it. We would like to explain how we have come to use games for which Nintendo holds the copyright. herein referred to as Nintendo games and RTA in Japan, and why Nintendo games are not being used in RTA in Japan summer 2025, as well as our future actions. RTA in Japan had previously used Nintendo games, but on June 13th, 2025, Nintendo pointed out that the use of Nintendo games by a corporation requires prior permission, and that our previous use was without prior permission and constituted unauthorized use. RTA in Japan wishes to continue using Nintendo games and have begun discussions with Nintendo. So when you read this, you're kind of like, oh, well, they're just busting up into this room and being like, hey, you can't use our stuff. You know, you can't do it. And so from an optics perspective, especially from a Western optics perspective, it is something that is very jarring. It's something that, you know, it seems like Nintendo once again kind of overstepping boundaries of things that don't really matter. You know, when you have games being done in a speed run format, it's essentially free promotion for games. This is a company working with Doctors Without Borders, so, you know, a pretty good charity at the end of the day. So it's kind of like, well, why would Nintendo step in and do this if they're not just, you know, being the over aggressive company with their IP? And I sat here and I just kept thinking about it, and I'm like, well, why isn't this like, there has to be some sort of reasoning behind it. And the fact that this is taking place in Japan and not in America really got me thinking, like, there has to be more to this. So I did some digging around, and I came across a very interesting thread on Reddit. Now, I know some people are going to say, oh, well, you know, this is just a bunch of Nintendo simps and, you know, in a Reddit thread, but I think it does bring some context into how this happened, why this happened, and what can be done in the future for this. Because like the Rammstein song says, we are living in America. America is wunderbar. You know, we don't all live in America. There are different rules, different regulations, different restrictions in different countries. And sometimes Americans forget how good they have it with stuff like this. So here is the thread. And then, you know, there are some people down here who kind of shine light to it. There's no way Nintendo comes out looking good in this story, but anyone familiar with how Japanese streaming works knows that the moment they didn't have the permissions, it was over then and there. And then somebody else comes along and says, not quite. The article explains exactly where and when it became a problem. When the event became an official Japanese legal entity. Legal entities have to follow Japanese laws to the letter, so now they have to be very exact and strict about permissions and timelines. Timeliness? Okay, timeliness. I don't know why I read that as timelines. They were fine to stream the games, whatever games, without permission for years, but they only recently did they file to become a legal entity. The same way anyone streaming any game should do their research first. It's a shitty rule, but blah, blah, blah. It was something that, you know, was done because they changed how they became a legal entity. RTA also said that they will get permission for next year's event. It's just a notice as to why they didn't get Nintendo games this year. They don't need to look good in this. There's a reason no one in Japan is complaining about this, because this is completely normal in the country. You guys in your Western media and YouTubers need to consider that Japanese has a completely different rules mindset and culture. And, you know, it's true. It's true. And then people, you know, come along, is it laws? Yes, laws and rights and stuff like that. This is standard in Japanese law. VTuber agencies in Japan have to ask for permission for every game they want to stream. So it's not so much about Nintendo looking bad in this situation as most Western media is framing this. Because if you actually look into the here, now, and why of this situation, I think it does kind of make sense. You know, and I am someone, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you would know this. I'm someone that disagrees with a lot of Nintendo's practices. We get into that gray area where, yes, something is technically a law, but is it worth going out and doing something about it, potentially damaging your reputation in the eyes of gamers, and then, just to enforce an IP of an NES game on an emulator or something like that. When it comes to things like emulation, I'm very outspoken about that stuff because I feel like that gray area is so gray when you're not able to purchase these games, a lot of these games, through a legal means in order to benefit the companies involved. So what does it matter how you play the games? But when it comes to something like this and is based in Japanese law and is a standard in Japan, not an exception, not kind of a gray area thing, but just something that happens in Japan on a regular basis, to the point of where the company is like, yeah, this is why we couldn't do it this year. We're going to try to work with them next year and get the games in here. I think framing it as just Nintendo being big, bad, and evil, I think is a bit of a misconception. I think it's a not fair assessment. And it's weird how a lot of Western media that has covered this didn't get into the why of the situation, didn't find out the reason for it. When it comes to something like an NES emulator or NES ROMs or something like that, we know the reason why. It's because Nintendo is going to hold their IP close to their chest, even though you can't buy some of these games, to give them money because they're not available on the current streaming service. So I feel like there's more of a gray area with this, but it's something that is accepted and commonplace in Japanese law, that to the point of where people in Japan are completely understanding of this because of the fact that, a change was done to the corporation that is behind this, that is now a legal entity. So they have to do things kind of by the book in order to progress and continue to do it. I feel like it's a very different thing going on with this, but realistically, this is just my opinion. I feel like people are going to have differentiating opinions on this as to the whys and why nots of why this is good, why they shouldn't do this, that, and the other. But I just find it interesting how a lot of these Western sites just completely framed it as is and didn't include a lot of context to it. Because initially, just reading those initial articles, I was pissed off. I was like, this is bullshit. Like, why would Nintendo do this? Like, this is such a bad look. But if you look into the reasoning behind it and the commonplaceness behind it and the way that IP is handled in Japan versus how it's handled in something like the United States, it is a different world than where you come from. That was a great show. I liked the dude, what was it, Dwayne? I liked his glasses. Like, if I ever had glasses, that's what I would have. Ones that flip up and they're like sunglasses, and you flip them down and then they're not sunglasses. Those are fucking based. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this situation and what you thought about the Indie World Showcase. Are there some games that I should have on my radar? Because I'm probably going to ignore you if you tell me that, because I don't know. From what I saw, nothing really looked that appealing to me. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.